Hi, Peter Charles here, Folk Fly Fishing. And if you've been following my videos, you've known I've had basically the same format for the last 9 years. So I thought, well, I'm starting a new series, about time I refresh the format a little bit and make it a little bit different. So here's what I'm doing. This particular video is on favorite rods. And I'm starting off with my NRX 9-foot 9 weight. Now, I've picked this particular rod out to start with because, first off, I've done a lot of fishing with it. It's my primary striped bass rod, and I've caught a ton of fish on it. So what makes us different from any other 9-weight out there? And what makes us different from my Pro 4X 9-weight, which I also have used a lot in Cape Cod? Well, the one thing you notice with NRX rods in general, and this one in particular, is they're very light feeling rods. They're very light casting rods. They fish very lightly too, which is something we tend to forget. We talk about swing weight, but we forget that when we're actually stripping line in, the weight of the rod and the balance of the rod is also impacting our fatigue levels. If you've got a very clunky rod that, when you're fighting a fish, it doesn't give you much leverage. When you're trying to strip line in, it feels so tip heavy. Those things over time, will wear on the forearm muscles, and you start to have, enough of that. Okay, I'm going to go back and get a beer. So a lot to do with my preference for this rod involves how low effort the rod is overall when I fish striped bass. It has a few characteristics in its action which are interesting. It tends to bend mostly in the upper 2/3. That's where it does most of its work when casting. It's got a very stiff butt, which helps with lifting fish. I mean, let's face it, this is a saltwater rod. It's designed to land big saltwater species. I mean, I can handle a 30, 40 pound striped bass on this rod. So it's got that beefy butt section to handle the bigger fish. However, it's interesting how it changes the characteristics. It's a very light casting rod with great responsiveness. It handles a broad range of lines. I run anywhere from 325 to 375 grain weight, 9-weights and 10-weight lines on it, and they work just fine. So you've got a lot of flexibility in the lines. In fact, when I move between an 8-weight cold water, a 9-weight cold water salt or a 10-weight, I can't hardly tell the difference. So it has that kind of easygoing relationship with lines, if you can put it that way. You don't have to be fussy about it. If you're close, it'll work. It picks sinking lines out of the water quite nicely. But what's interesting, I can't cast it as far as the Pro 4X. You wouldn't think that. You would think the NRX would go farther, but it doesn't. And it's not the rod, it's me. The Pro 4X action fits me to a T. It bends progressively right down to the butt. It's not oriented more to the top end like the NRX. And I find that just easier to cast for distance. So the NRX tops out for me around 85, 90 feet. That's about it. I can get about at least another 20 feet out of the Pro 4X on top of that. So if it was just about distance, the Pro 4X would be the preferred rod. But for overall fishing, I mean, I just like the easy way this lays out line, and I just don't have to work. Like, I'm not saying the Pro 4X I have to work. I don't. It's a pretty easy casting rod. But nevertheless, the NRX beats it in that regard. And it's just a very pleasant all-around rod to fish all day with. So if you're in the market for a good saltwater 9-foot 9-weight, we've got the NRX Plus out now, which is more of the same. So you can give that one a check out. So there's my favorite NRX 9-foot 9-weight. It's got a lot of salt water usage and a lot of striped bass to its name, and a few blues as well, I might add it. Cheers. Yeah, there we go.